So hi and welcome to Podpadstudios.
Episode 32 or 3, we've lost count.
We've lost count actually. We've been so busy this last, 2 weeks. I mean, I've been doing work on the Dana project, obviously, which you've seen on other videos, but everything's kind of been on hold for a bit because we've just been up doing shows with Tiffany.
Yeah, at the NEC,
at the
Smart Manufacturing Week. Which was super cool. We had some brilliant people visit the stand, and we were basically the entertainment, but it's a real techie show, so we go around and we learn. And we had our friends from Coventry University there, and we also had a little bit of a meeting with Optimus Prime and Bumblebee.
Here's our actual food.
That's it, thank you.
And then your breakfast. Do you want any sauces or?
No, we all got some, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can't you get to the brown sauce?
So you can guess where we are at the moment. We're in the best cafe in Swindon, which is Blues. I can't really show you what I've got just ordered because it's just so cool. But we're both suffering a little bit with kind of sore throats, and we've had a week of just rain and shows and get-ins and get-outs, and it's been quite intense, I must admit.
I've been really busy with Swindon Arts Studios because we were at the Old Town Festival on Sunday. All the artists came and ran workshops, and thanks to them for having us. That was super cool. And anyway.
Hi, I've come inside in the workshop because I'm going to do some work on Tiffany. It's also pouring with rain outside again now. I think we're expecting thunderstorms or something like that. So I've decided that I'm going to do a little bit of electronics work, have a little bit of break from the Dana project as well, because obviously at the moment it's just filling and rubbing things down and whatever. So, what have we been doing with Tiffany? Well, something a little bit different. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is to actually answer some questions, because we've had this question asked loads now, and the reason we've had it asked loads is because a lot of people have actually seen me out and about with multiple radios. Now, let me explain. Let me put my cup of tea down first. As you know, I use FR Sky radios, and we're not sponsored by FR Sky. We don't promote them. We don't think they're just bloody good radios. Oops, sorry. Can I swear on? Probably can't. They're very good radios. Now, the tray radio is fantastic. This is the XE radio. And the beauty of the tray radio is the physical size of it. It's in front of me. I'm not having to hide in a crowd when I'm controlling Tiffany. I'm very close, nearby. It's clearly a radio-controlled robot, whereas sometimes when we're doing things like the Daleks or the droids, I'll probably use one of these, like a little, a much lighter controller. Same amount of power. If you're an FR Sky aficionado, you will know that they operate in exactly the same way, but obviously with this you can disappear into a crowd and different controllers for different things. However, a couple of people have seen us operating both transmitters at the same time controlling Tiffany, and they wanted to know how we did it. Most people would assume that we're using trainer mode. Now, what a trainer mode is, it's something that's used when people fly model aircraft, and the idea is, because the model aircraft might be a complicated thing to learn to fly, the primary radio or the master radio is linked via a Bluetooth link to a slave radio. You give the student the slave radio, and then a control button on the master radio is switched to give the student control. So while the switch is flicked, or the mode is set, the student has control over their radio. But the experienced flyer can stand by with the master radio, and at the flick of a switch, takes back control of the aircraft away from the student if something were to go wrong. That's kind of a trainer mode. Now, that's fantastic for aircraft and things like that. But the downside to this is one or the other. So normally what you can't do, let me just put these two down a moment and explain. What you normally can't do is have two transmitters controlling one radio. So let's take an example. On your receiver, you have got it connected to a servo, and that servo, when you move the slider or a joystick or whatever you move, controls that servo left and right, okay? If you had a second radio, a second transmitter connected to that same receiver and the same servos, you could end up with a conflict. So what could happen is you could end up with one control saying move the servo right and the other control saying move the servo left simultaneously. And that's going to upset things. That's going to either break something or nothing is going to happen. And generally that's why we don't have two transmitters bound to one receiver. However, as you know, we do a lot of work with robotics and these entertainment robots, and sometimes it's very difficult for one person to control multiple things. So the way we get around this is we don't use a trainer function, but we are able to bind effectively two transmitters to one model. So we can have, well, effectively, we've run before with 3 transmitters controlling one model. And it is really, really simple. It's actually a lot simpler than you think. We use a little gadget called a multiplexer. Now, I know this is probably going to be virtually impossible to see on the camera, but it's a little board, and let me explain how it works. Think about it like a switch. Into the multiplexer, you can put 2 sources, source A and source B. The output from the multiplexer would then go into your control, your servos, your relays, your switches, your whatever you want to control. This particular one can control 4 channels. So we've got, effectively, we can put 4 channels in from source A, 4 channels in from source B, and 4 channels to the outputs. You with me so far? What we then do is we have a selector wire that comes from this, that goes to our radio, our primary radio, to a switch. And when that switch is flicked, we toggle between source A and source B. We can choose whether our input is A or B. Now, this is great, for example, for, I don't know, you might want to use a Polyloo control board which is running a predetermined sequence. You could input that through control A, but you could still have your receiver plugged into B, source B, which means at the flick of a button, you can move from a predetermined program to full radio control. So it's great for puppeteering, and we use that a huge amount in our puppeteering robots. Now, what you can also do is daisy chain these, and it gets a little bit more complicated to understand, but what you're basically doing is creating, if you like, a pipeline of electronic switches that are all controlled from the master radio. So here's a little setup here. We have basically an Archer 6-channel receiver, okay? That is bound to this transmitter. These two are bound together, right? Nothing to do with the main TDR18 that's in here. Nothing at all. Completely separate, okay? You with me so far? This receiver is bound in the normal way to this transmitter. Now, this receiver is then plugged in to source A, input source A, on the multiplexer, all right? Now, the output from our switching commands on here, we use a number of these multiplexers. The output from one of these multiplexers can be plugged into the input of another multiplexer. You've got to do a little bit of tweaking, but it's relatively simple to do. But what basically this means is when we take the selector switch from this multiplexer back to our primary radio, which was, of course, the XE, we can use switches then to switch between sources. So in effect, what we could do is to this multiplexer, we could allocate 4 channels. We could say head left, head right, head up and down, and maybe, oops, these bits, it frustrate me massively. They keep falling off and I've got to do something about them. Anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked there. Left and right, up and down, ears, maybe 4 things that could move on the head. On the whole, you know, with the radio, if we're doing a performance, I don't really want to control the head. But there are times that I do need to control the head. So, into this multiplexer, we put basically the servos that control all this into this multiplexer, or rather on the output of this multiplexer. The input, remember, of this multiplexer, channel A, was the other little smaller twin transmitter. We've now still got an input source. That input source will come out of one of the other multiplexers, which is going through the same kind of switching process. So we have a Polyloo control board plugged into a multiplexer with the onboard receiver. Have you lost me yet? Basically, what it allows me to do, though, and this is the, if you like, the magic behind it, is on my primary radio here, I have got full control over the robot, every single function within the robot. With a flick of a switch, I can switch to a predetermined program, which is controlled by something like the Polyloo Maestro control boards. Now, a head might move autonomously, or other things might work autonomously. At the flick of a button, I move back into effectively radio control mode. So I'm now controlling the head. But at the flick of another button, I still have full control over the robot in terms of its drive systems, but I've now handed, with the flick of a switch, control of the head over to this transmitter. So now I can drive the robot around, control any channels I want on this transmitter, but I can allocate also any channels I don't want to control to this transmitter. And there's no conflict. There can't be a conflict because we're using effectively an and/or switching. We're saying switch source A or switch source B, but because we have multiple layers of those multiplexers, it allows us to run multiple transmitters effectively to the same model at the same time. So we could have 3 puppeteers controlling one model with overrides from the master. So at any point, if we were out filming with something, or we needed somebody said, you know, move left, move right, and they needed it to happen really, really quickly, the master could take back control, and it could all be controlled from this. Or, do you see the flexibility? So it's a little bit like a trainer, except it's not one or the other. Both can operate at the same time. And depending on the number of these multiplexers that you daisy chain, and how you use control boards to link with them and RC receivers, you can end up with quite a complicated system. It's basically as an analog way of doing what you would do in a computer, which would effectively control gates, you know, and or if control gates. But because it's an analog way of doing it, it means we can use physical controls to control a single robot. So that is how we do it. These little multiplexer boards are 20 quid. They're fantastic. But just think of them as electronic A or B switches. And then once you've designed your circuit and you've thought about the complexity of the circuit, you can give a puppeteer control of the head and different bits and pieces while you retain control of other things. Now, I know what somebody's probably saying is, well, that's just like training. It isn't. It's very, very different because we can also give multiple control of things as well. Obviously, we can control the switches, so you could have simultaneous control. Now, there are times where simultaneous control can actually be really, really useful. I'm not going to go into it in detail now, but we sometimes use it in braking systems where and override systems. So sometimes 2 transmitted signals effectively into the multiplexer from both transmitters can override. It gets complicated, but yeah, it is possible to run multiple transmitters on a single model using multiple receivers, or even transmitting to effectively control single sources, servos, switches, actuators, whatever you want, from 2 transmitters simultaneously. I hope that makes sense. If anybody wants any more details, I've got loads of diagrams, wiring diagrams. In fact, I think I put lots of wiring diagrams up previously in one of our previous videos. I think if we can, we'll attach a very simple wiring diagram to this video, to instead of me waving my arms around, because I'm aware of I wave my arms around quite a lot. When you see it, you see the simplicity of it. It's really about what do you want to do with it. You know, do you need multiple control of things? And yeah, so there you have it. That's where we're at with Tiffany. We're just about to add some more control systems to her, actually. We're just about to add, well, I'm not going to tell you, actually. If you want to see what we've added to Tiffany, which is quite cool, actually, it's really good. We will be at, I think the next outing will be at Swindon Comic Con. Don't ask me for the dates because I never remember. Look in the comments below and you will see the dates. It's in June and it's coming up soon, I think middle of June. We're going to be there with Johnny Five, Nottingham Johnny Five, and her and Tiffany are going to be doing some really cool stuff together. So maybe, hopefully, we'll see you then. Okay, bye now.
Brown sauce too. So that's demolished that breakfast. Well done, Master Maker.
I feel a lot better now.
What I'll do now is say goodbye to the people and remind them that we're at Swindon Comic Con on the 21st of June.
Goodbye to the people. And we're going to have something really, really special. We are going to be joined. We have got a whole hall to ourselves.
It's called the Future Hall.
The Future Hall, all robotics, and we will be joined by Ryan
From Johnny
from
Five,
Johnny Five Nottingham. He's going to be joining us with Tiffany. So Johnny Five and Tiffany will be getting up to antics, driving around the hall,
Maker's
and
Space will be there.
Maker's Space will be there with more robotics.
Flight simulator to come and have a go on for free. So super cool.
It's a real future-y theme, a robotics theme, but you'll see them driving around like you don't normally see them driving around because we can cordon it all off and we've got loads and loads of space. Right, it's going to be really cool.
And also just to mention that Swindon Arts Fringe is on from the 16th to the 29th in about 7 different locations all over town. That's free, so come along and see that too. And we'll see you next time. Bye.